So the other two races that we're here to discuss tonight are Tennessee Senate District 8 and Tennessee House District 12. Again, we did invite, just as a disclaimer, we did invite all 5 candidates who are running between these 2 seats, and the 3 that you see on stage tonight are the ones who accepted our invitation. The way this is going to work is we're going to start with several questions related to candidacy, view of government, and legislative policy. And then at the end of the night, we will be doing a straw poll. You can pick that up at the registration table out in the lobby and just fill that out and put it in the basket. The way the format is going to work tonight is I will give them the first opening question. They'll each have 3 to 4 minutes to discuss why you're running for office, and then the rest of the questions will be 1 minute response time. Chris over here will be holding up signs to let you know when your time is about up. So, does anyone want to go first?
I think age before beauty.
All right, we'll start with Senator Niceley, and you have about 3 to 4 minutes to discuss.
Is this on? No, not yet. Is it on now? Now it's on. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you. It's, there was a little echo there. I could not understand everything she was saying, but I think she said, well, know why I was running. I'm running for re-election, and I've been in the Senate 3 terms now, and in those 3 terms, we have done some phenomenal things that other states only dream about. We've abolished 4 major taxes. We abolished inheritance tax, a gift tax, a Hall's income tax, and a professional tax. And every time we abolish a tax, we end up with more money. That allows us to do other things. But I've made a little list here of some bills that no one ever talks about. The newspapers don't talk about them. Nobody tells you about it. Don't see them on the internet. But just a lot of people would think they're insignificant bills that we pass. But it really, at the end of the day, they're all about freedom. Letting you be free. Let you do things that your parents didn't think about. And I won't have time to go down all of them. But if it's all right, kid, I'll just. You know, when I first got to Senate, you had to have a $50 permit to sell eggs to your neighbor if you had 2 chickens. Well, the law said you didn't, but the code said the rules said you did. These agencies, like the Department of Agriculture, make rules that try to overpower the law. So we asked the Attorney General, and the Attorney General said, no, you don't have to have a permit to sell eggs to your neighbors. You couldn't sell raw milk, so I passed a bill to allow you to sell raw milk in Tennessee, which a lot of other states you still can't. I passed a bill to let you sell raw butter if you're going to have raw milk. We passed a bill to allow small farmers to raise and process up to 20,000 chickens on their farm and sell them to restaurants or sell them anywhere. The USDA inspects them. But they never come around because they say they never have any problems, and they just quit inspecting. Why inspect something if you never had any problems? Then we included rabbits in that, and it's a thing called a small farm exemption. So now you can raise rabbits and process your rabbits, sell them to restaurants or wherever without. Well, actually, the USDA could inspect if they wanted to, but they don't. We passed a bill to where the cities can't annex you without a vote on it. They used to annex by ordinance, but now if the city wants to annex you, they're going to have to let you vote on it. But the best part is, if you've got a farm in that area and you don't want to be annexed, the farmer has a veto. He said, no, I don't want to be annexed. I want to stay in the county. So that was a great thing there. I had people almost cry when they found that out. And these little local planners, they said, well, if you're going to build a house on your farm, you have to subdivide your farm. We said, no, you don't. And we asked the Attorney General, and he said, no, you don't. And they just ignored it. So I passed a law, and all it said was, homes are incidental to agriculture. Because in 1950, when they passed the zoning laws, they said agriculture is exempt from local zoning ordinances. And they said anything that is incidental to agriculture is exempt. So my little bill, all it said was homes are incidental to agriculture. So now then, if you got a farm and you want to build a new house, you don't have to subdivide your farm, because homes, or if you want to build one for your children or build one for your hired help, you don't have to subdivide your farm. So that's just a few. I could go on, I got another page here, but we've done lots of little things that you never hear of.
Okay, my name's Larry Linton. I retired here from serving 30 years in the United States Navy in 2017, and I decided to run when I recognized that a lot of people in our General Assembly, we supposedly have a Republican supermajority. They don't vote that way. They violate their oaths, and I've got a pretty good, strong track record of 30 years of following an oath to the Constitution that I think needs to be brought back to the General Assembly. They are governed by corporate interests, not the interests of you here in Sevier County. We need the people here in Sevier County to have proper representation in the House, and I promise to do that for you. For far too long now, we have had a good old boy system running Sevier County. If many of you that are following me know that the GOP here in the Sevier County are playing it fast and loose with the bylaws. They will enforce certain ones if it's to the detriment of constitutional conservative candidates, and then they will not enforce certain ones if it applies to them. So, I'm fighting against a big machine, and my 30 years in the Navy, I've never backed down against the fight, and I don't plan on backing down now. I plan to bring integrity and courage and Republican values back to the General Assembly.
Well, thank you guys for all being here. Before I start, I really want to say a big thank you to Kelly for inviting me to come here and giving me this opportunity, and also give a super big thank you to my mom and dad. Without their support, I couldn't have done this that I've been basically dreaming of since the 4th grade, when I knew I wanted to go do something in politics. In the 4th grade, like I said, that's when I said I want to do something in politics, but I didn't know quite when, and I never thought doing something in the Tennessee General Assembly would ever be on that list. It wasn't until in college, my first semester freshman year, I took a state and local politics class and learned how the state government works, and I was like, this would be awesome to serve in. I knew then that I wanted to do it someday, didn't quite know when. When Dale Carr announced that he was retiring, I said, this could be a perfect opportunity for me to put my name out there, put my foot in the door, and come out and maybe make something happen. I really want to serve this county. Born and raised here in Sevier County. I've lived here my whole life, and I love it. We are definitely the best county in the state and in the entire country. I believe that wholeheartedly. So I want to go into our state government, and I want to help make a difference. I want to be a voice for change. There's some things that are happening there that need to be changed, and I think I can help to do that. So thank you.
All right, so the next question, and this will be 1 minute each. Christian, we'll start with you since we kind of ended with you here. What makes you stand out in contrast to your opponent or your opponents?
Oh, wow, that's a super easy question for me. You might not be able to tell, but I am pretty young. I am 21 years old. This is the first time I am eligible to run for this seat. So super young. That's definitely like my standout point, that I am young. I think being so young will help me bring some ideas to the General Assembly that other people aren't going to know, especially with education. I will be someone who just went through the education system, and someone who can say what is going wrong with it instead of the 70-year-olds who are trying to say, we need to fix this.
What makes me different is, again, I'm a veteran. I can't be bought. I'm not part of the good old boy network. My last name is not the right last name for the county. In fact, my wife and I were going through the voter rolls and found out that we are the only Lintons in Sevier County, so she's afraid of being blacklisted because of this. What I hope to do is I like to provide an example of what it means to follow an oath and to bring Christ-centered servant leadership back to government, just like our founding fathers envisioned for our country.
I've been listening to all this. What was the original question, Kelly?
The question was,
Question.
what makes you stand out in contrast to your opponent?
Well, I'm older and better looking and more articulate, more interesting. I mean, it just goes on and on. Well, there's something to be said for experience, and I know that the legislature is not perfect, and I get frustrated. We spend the winter down there. But at the end of the day, when you look at the good things we've done, we're a pretty darn good legislature. We don't do everything right, and we have some members that are sorry. There are sorry people in the state of Tennessee, and they're represented in the legislature. The legislature is supposed to represent everybody, and it does. But it takes 50 votes in the House and 17 in the Senate to pass anything, and you've got to learn in the Senate, you've got to learn to count to 17 to get anything done. And I've been very successful in counting to 17. I pass things in the Senate a lot of times I can't get passed in the House, but we have passed a lot of bills in the House and Senate.
All right, we'll start with Larry on this next question. I'm going to try to switch it up who starts first. So, all right, Larry, you can start with this one. What have you done in your community to make a difference? I'm not looking for titles or positions, but examples of boots on the ground type work.
I'm very active within my church. I volunteer whenever I can, whenever I'm home. And I meet most times when I'm home with a local group of people out in Seymour. We talk about problems and how to fix them out there at the White Star Market breakfast. You got to come out on some Saturday morning. And I think what'll help is that I know the actual issues of the Seymour area and how they've been run over by the entire county for the last many, many decades.
Yeah, so I'm pretty young, as I've already said, and so I've not had a whole lot of time to help out in the community. I did just recently get appointed to the board of Sevierville's Park and Recreations Foundation. So I will be going through and helping to make Sevierville more beautiful. We'll help, we're currently building a blueway, some blueway access points so that people can use that. So that's one thing I will be doing a lot of. Back in high school, though, is when I would have to look at that. I was very active with community service. I helped out with the Sevier County Junior League basketball all the time. I was one of the main people there who worked every Saturday throughout all of middle school and high school. And so that's one of the biggest ways that I've served my community a lot.
Well, I've been in the legislature off and on for a long time. Just recently, I secured Sevier County another judge position. They had an extra judgeship in Memphis. They were over judge. They had too many judges, and we were under judge. So for the first time in history, Andy Farmer and I successfully, I won't say stole, we borrowed a judgeship from Memphis, and here in the 4th Judicial District, which is Jefferson County, Sevier County, Granger County, and Clark County. But through the years, I've farmed over in Strawberry Plains. We've produced a lot of milk through the years. We've enough milk to feed every kid in Sevier County for a long time. We've produced beef, vegetables, tomatoes, lamb, hogs, chickens, and trained lots of horses. So we've done a lot of things that seemed to be the thing to do at the time.
All right, Frank, we'll start the next one with you on this one. Describe your worldview and the foundational principles that guide your life.
Can you say that again?
Describe your worldview and the foundational principles that guide your life.
My worldview and the principles that guide my life. Well, the worldviews, nothing in this chaotic world we have right now, nothing makes sense until you realize that there's a global takeover, a global power, Mr. Global, a lot of people call him, that's trying to take over America. The one world government, boys. They can't take over the one world and make the one world government work as long as America is armed. And it appears that the American South is the fly in the ointment for the one worlders. And Tennessee is the star of the South. And we've got to keep Tennessee strong. We've got to protect our Second Amendment rights. And I passed a bill that said we're under no obligation to do anything the WHO or the United Nations tells us to do. We don't send representatives to them. They don't tell us what to do. We actually passed that bill in the Senate and the House. And we just need to start realizing the chaos is caused by these globalists. And that's the only thing that makes sense.
Oh, my worldview is that, similar to Frank's, there's evil out there, and they need to remove America from the world stage in order to ascend to power. My foundational principles can all be found in the foundational documents of our country, and of that is included the Bible. A lot of people don't realize this, but most of our constitutional principles and our Declaration of Independence, all of those concepts were brought out from the Bible on how we do self-governance, and we need to get back to self-governance. We need to restore federalism, where the states are sovereign to the federal government, and we can tell the federal government to pack sand, and that's what we need to start doing.
So my worldview, I'm gonna get a little poli-sci here. We studied in American foreign policy some different traditions, and I am what you call a Jacksonian, named after President Andrew Jackson. But what we believe is, just like Larry just said, America kind of needs to be more isolated from the worldview. We don't need to be on the world stage as the leader all the time. Even though we are clearly the best country, in my opinion, we don't need to be the ones leading the charge every time. We don't need to be giving NATO all of its funding. Let the other countries help out. Specifically in the U.S., I do also believe that the Constitution is the most important document that we have, and we cannot let anything override what was written in that Constitution. Thank you.
All right, Christian, we'll start with you on the next question. So this is a long statement and then the question at the end, so just stay with me here. We're going to talk about the idea of interposition. The doctrine of lesser magistrates or interposition is rooted in the biblical concept of interposition. Interposition is defined as when someone or a group willingly places themselves between an oppressor and their intended victim. As a legislator elected to represent your constituents, can you describe what you believe the purpose of government to be?
So, the purpose of government is not to get into the lives of the people you are governing, but to make laws that will help them out and let them just live their lives how they want to. I'm a libertarian. I believe that we should have the least amount of government possible, and it should never overreach into society. And so that's what I believe there. I think that answers your question.
Interposition design perfectly describes the way the state government is supposed to be designed. The State General Assembly here in Tennessee is supposed to be the body of government that stands in the gap between an overreaching federal government and the citizens of Tennessee. for the most part, they've done an okay job, but there is a lot more that they can do that they're not willing to do because it comes with federal money attached to it. We need to wean our state off of federal money. Most of it is spent outside of the Article 1, Section 8 authority of the federal government. So the state needs to reassert its sovereignty, that interposition, to stand between the overreaching federal government and the people of Tennessee. Our federal government, in most cases, sometimes the state government, they're involved in every aspect of our daily lives. The purpose of government, as stated in the Declaration of Independence, is to secure the people's liberty. Nothing else. It has far exceeded that role for the past 200 years.
I think it was Jefferson who said that he who governs best governs least. And there's a lot of truth in that, and that's been my position all the way through. I was as conservative when I was in high school as I am now. I've never changed. What people don't realize, and I didn't realize this for a long time, the state is the parent, the federal government is a child, and the county governments and the city governments are a child. The state is the parent. The state governments created the federal government. We could abolish them. We could have a state convention and abolish the federal government, go bankrupt, let all the bondholders lose their money, and start a new federal government if we wanted to and had the nerve to do it. At the state level, when the state got started, everything was legal. Rape, murder, everything was legal until the legislature made it illegal. And at the county level, everything is illegal until the state legislature makes it legal. Now, it took me a while to figure that, and a lot of people don't understand that. And we all, as Republicans, we like to say local control, but the locals don't have any control unless the legislature gave it to them. And if they abuse that local control, we have to step in. We don't want to do that. The legislature likes local control, but there are times when the state has to step in and say, hey, we gave you the power to do this, but you're abusing your power.
All right, we'll start with Larry for the next question. What is your position on citizens being able to recall elected officials?
I think that is an inherent power stated in our Constitution. All governing power is inherent in the people. If we are unhappy with the job that they were elected to do, or they're not doing the job they were elected to do, we should be able to recall them. Most specifically, we should be able to recall school boards. School boards in our state are the bodies of government that are closest to the people, and for far too long they've exceeded their authority. They've sexualized our children. They've introduced corrosive and divisive curriculums into our school systems, and they are not able to be recalled. We need to change that. Every citizen has the right. All power is inherent in the people. We need to be able to recall any elected official.
I definitely believe we should have the right to recall. That should be a central part of democracy. The citizens chose you to serve. We should be allowed to choose you to not serve anymore. Sadly, when the Tennessee Constitution was written, no one wanted to put that in there. Other states do have that recall. We saw just a few years ago in California where citizens were getting tired of Gavin Newsom, so they tried to recall him. Sadly, it failed. But it did work years ago when Arnold became their governor. So like the recall, I think we definitely should have that. That should be a central part of democracy. It would take a change to the Tennessee Constitution, though, in order for us to be able to do that.
Actually, the legislature recalled a judge just this year. In the Constitution, there's two ways to get rid of politicians. You can impeach them, but in the judges and DAs, 2/3 vote, we can remove a judge with a 2/3 vote just with a, and we did that. We had a judge that was on drugs, she wasn't showing up, and the day before we were going to vote to recall her, she resigned. But, and I told him, I said, we need to every year look around and find a liberal judge and a liberal DA and remove her and just scare the rest of them. But in 1992, the Governor McWhorter passed the BEP, the Better Education Program, and the legislature gave him the authority to go into a failing school district like Memphis and fire the director of schools, fire the school board, reconstitute the schools, do whatever it takes to jumpstart the school system and get it to working. So far, no governor's had enough backbone to do that, but they have the legislature did give them the power to do that if they want to. But I was going to say something on that, but I'm out of seconds.
All right, so Frank, we'll start with the next one with you. In 2022, the Dobbs case Supreme Court ruling sending life decisions back to the states. Can you describe what it means to be pro-life, and do you believe there are any exceptions?
I've had the right to life, Jessie right to life endorsement many times all down through the years. It's always rape, incest, and life of the mother. When we passed SDR 137, that amended the Constitution mentioned rape, incest, and life of the mother. The problem was it gave the legislature the power to change those three. I'm where I've always been. I'm pro-life with the exception of rape, incest, and life of the mother. In Tennessee, due to the trigger law, and it came back with no exceptions, and then we put the life of the mother back in. I think eventually we'll put rape and incest back in. I'm where I've always been. I've always gotten the right to life endorsement. That's where I am.
Okay, I'll take it. I believe life begins at conception. I believe Tennessee's Human Life Protection Act is the right way to go. It was tried to be weakened a couple years ago, but it's still pretty steady. The only exceptions, I believe, are the life of the mother. Rape and incest creates a life, and the life that was created is innocent. For far too long in our country, we have treated the abortion crowd has treated the baby like a real estate transaction. The baby's life only matters because of location. So we got to stop worshiping at the altar of Baal and killing babies in our country.
I do also believe that life begins at conception, and just like Mr. Linton said, I believe that the only exception should be for life of the mother. I believe that every life that has been put on this planet has been given a purpose by God, and we should never take that away. The only time I could see the exception would be when it would be taking away another life. It's hard for me to say that, but that's maybe the only exception I could see. Rape, incest, I do believe we should still be keeping that child because it has a purpose. Every single life has a purpose given to it by God.
All right, Christian, we'll start with you on this next one. So now we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about education. So the question is, what would you do about a child who is, quote unquote, stuck in a bad school?
So one thing that I advocated for back my freshman year of college was open enrollment throughout every county in Tennessee, to where you can choose any public school you'd like to go to, and you are allowed to do that, no zoning or anything. That's something that I definitely believe we have to have. So I advocated for that inside of my class. Never took it anywhere outside of there, but that is something I'd advocate there. For kids that are just stuck in a really bad school, I feel like we have to figure out a way of figure out why that school is bad and figure out how we can help them.
For the child that's stuck in a bad school, well, the bad school is the problem, not the child. Recently, the Tennessee General Assembly considered Bill Lee's Education Freedom Act, which is really the government taking your money, going to bribe you with it to purchase freedom from the institution that they control. Does that sound like life in a constitutional republic? Absolutely not. So fixing the schools, probably at this point, they're beyond control. We should offer those parents a lot of information about homeschooling and homeschooling co-ops and providing them the information on how they could take there's already school choice. We have the choice to either homeschool, private school, or public education. Some of those options are priced out of people's means because of government control. Again, government intrusion into people's lives. But we have to inform the people about the other options that are available to them at a lower cost, such as homeschooling and homeschool co-ops.
I actually had a bill to have open enrollment a few years ago, and of course, Williamson County kind of killed that. They thought everybody wanted to go to Williamson County. But I went 2 years in one county, 2 years in another county in high school, and a lot of times changing the school, changing the crowd you run around with is more important than academics. But let me tell you something you probably never thought about. We don't really have a school problem in Tennessee. We've got a school problem in Memphis. If you take, Memphis has 17%, if I remember right, 18% of all the students in Tennessee are in the Shelby County schools. If you take their test scores out, Tennessee schools are in the top 20% in the nation. If you take Nashville out, 2 Democrat cities, then we're probably up in the teens. We've got, are our schools perfect? No. But they're a lot better than we get credit for. But if you say that, if you mention that, if you take Memphis out, we're in the top 20%, then you're a racist. Well, you're not, you're a realist. We need to fix the schools. The best, I know you say I don't have any time. You're mean.
You just talk slower than the rest.
Yeah, I ought to get extra time because I talk slow. But now then you got me, don't know what I was fixing to say now. Anyway, probably best.
All right, we'll start with Larry on this one. So we're still going to talk about education for a minute. So one of the governor's big pushes this year, as you mentioned, was the school choice agenda. Can you tell me how you define school choice?
As I just stated, every parent already has a choice to educate their children. They can either do the private school, they can do the homeschool, or they can leave them in the public schools. We already have the choice. Government has placed them out, some of those options out of reach because of their control of the economy. But private schools, if we bribe the citizens with their own tax money to send kids to private schools, we're only going to turn the private schools into the new public schools. So my view is, again, I just reiterated, have to provide the parents with the other options that are available to them at a lower cost, such as homeschooling and homeschooling co-ops. I believe public education is a relatively new experiment in the human cycle, and obviously that human experiment has failed because what we are producing now are sexualized, corrosive, and divided kids.
I do also believe that we have school choice still. If you choose to send your kid to a private school, you should be allowed to do that, but you've got to fund that entirely yourself. We shouldn't take money away from our public schools to fund a kid going to a private school. I was looking at the governor's budget proposal, and he had set an extra $144 million last year to be sent to the school vouchers. And I feel like that is awful that we would be taking that much money away from public schools just to send people to a new private school. So I definitely don't think we should have school vouchers. I think that open enrollment is also a great choice for school choice because that money is still going to the public schools, but people can choose which public school you want to go to.
Same question or a new question?
So the question was, how do you define school choice?
Well, these gentlemen here are right on target. We have school choice. If the governor's plan, there's 1 million kids in public schools in Tennessee. There's 100,000 in private schools. The governor's plan was going to affect about 20,000 students. Out of over 1 million, it was going to enough money for 20,000. In Arkansas, something like 95% of the kids that took the vouchers were already in a private school. You know, so I've been against the vouchers for different reasons. And it was mentioned, one of these guys mentioned this, when a private school takes public money, it's a public school. I mean, it's like Reagan said, public money is always followed by public control. Money is followed by government control. So in order to protect your private schools, keep the government out of them. And like I said, public schools are recent. They're a kind of recent thing. There was a school on my farm back in the 1930s. It was kind of a public school, but not really. But let me tell you a story. I'm bad to tell stories. History. I'll give you a history lesson whether you want it or not. When Niceboro was settled, the 258 pioneers signed the Niceboro Compact, the Cumberland Compact. 258. Only one signed with an X. 257 of those pioneers signed their name. They didn't have pre-K, they didn't have K, they didn't have public schools. How did they do it back there in log cabins with dirt floors? 257 of the 258 signed their name. And the Walk-Talk Compact, I think it was 119 or something people signed it. Only 2 signed with X's. So we need to go back and study how did they do that back then with no pre-K.
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll start with Frank on the next one. This may be a shorter answer. Who do you believe gives parents the right to choose the educational pathway for their child? Who gives them the right to choose?
There's an echo. I don't know.
Who do you believe gives the parents the right to choose the educational path for their children?
Who gives them that?
Mhm.
Well, I never thought of that, but I think the parents ought to be, the children belong to the parents. The children don't belong to the government. The parents ought to be able to decide which school, where to send them, if it's in the neighboring county, if it's a private school, public school. It's up to the parents. The parents know their children better than the government. And I think, it's up to the parents.
Of course, the parents should have that choice of where to send their kids to school. And what gives them that, I would go back and say the U.S. Constitution and the liberties that it gives everyone. That should be something that you are allowed to choose for yourself. Just like Senator Niceley said, the parents know the children way better than the government does, so they should be able to choose.
What gives parents the right for the educational path of children is God.
Amen.
We are entrusted by their Creator with our creations for their education. I'm sorry to disagree with you here, Christian, but the Constitution doesn't give anybody anything. The Constitution is a limit on the government, and the government should not be telling any parent on how they should educate their children. With the advent of public education came this term, compulsory education, right? That term means that you're going to pay the government to educate your child the way the government wants you to. That is overstepping their constitutional bounds.
All right. Christian, last question on education. Concerning education and the idea of school choice, again, that's what we've been talking about. Describe the difference between the freedom to choose and the means or ability to choose.
The freedom to choose and the means or ability to choose. Okay. So the freedom to choose would have to be you can just choose where to send your school. But the means is planning how to get them to that school. If you're going to a private school, how to pay for that school. So that's what the means would be. That's what the governor is trying to do with the vouchers, is to make the means not really have to be something you consider. All you have to do is consider that freedom, the freedom to choose. But what that does is it hurts everyone else that isn't choosing to go somewhere else. It hurts people who aren't choosing to go to a private school, who are choosing to stay at that public school, who are losing funding. So then that hurts their means to choose a good education.
Freedom and means. Okay, every parent has the freedom to choose where they're going to send their child. Every parent doesn't have the means to send, the ability to send their child wherever they want to. And that's conveniently created by the government, right? They've created the economic situations where both parents have to go to work to provide a modicum of stability at home. It's again, government intrusion in our lives that affects the means. But homeschooling is, in my opinion, homeschooling will save the republic. I'll just leave it at that.
You know, Larry, I've said that many a time. The hope of the future is the homeschoolers. They'd come to Niceville to have a convention in Niceville, and the kids would look you in the eye and they'd talk to you. They'd shake your hand and look you in the eye, and they would talk like adults. I had two nieces down in Texas that were homeschooled, and they were finished by lunchtime. And after lunch, they'd go around on the Meal for Wheels and take meals to old people. And they'd interact with the old people, and you can learn a lot more from old people than you can young people. Good stuff. I mean, learn some bad stuff with young kids. But I've always been a big fan of the homeschool. But here's the deal. If you say you have a failing school, here's the flaw in the governor's plan. Say you got a failing. He talks about these failing public schools. Let's say you've got a failing public school with 100 kids there, and 10 of them go to a private school. Now you've got 90 kids trapped in a failing school. Fix the school. Fire the director of schools. Fire the school board. Go in there and reconstitute the whole thing. Do what you got to do to fix it. He doesn't have the nerve to go to Memphis and do what we gave him the power to do 30 years ago. But taking 10 kids out of a failing school doesn't help those other 90 kids that are still trapped in a failing school. But in East Tennessee, we don't have all that many failing schools. Like I said, if you take Memphis out, we're in pretty good shape. I just hate to see our teachers bashed all the time when I've told teachers that very thing and had teachers start crying. Say, why didn't somebody tell me that? Why did they not tell me that the reason our test scores are so low? It's Nashville and Memphis, Democrat cities that they've had appointed directors of schools forever. Now, I've tried to pass let the counties elect their own director of schools. If we had elected directors of schools, a lot of these little problems we have would go away. When about half a dozen or a dozen mothers call that director of school and read his rights to him, you'd see things start changing. These appointed directors of schools have never worked. Right down in Memphis, right across the line in Mississippi, they have elected directors of schools, and they've got a wonderful school system.
Wow.
All right, Larry, we'll start with you on the next question. We're going to kind of switch topics here. Governor Lee's administration gave Ford almost $900 million of taxpayer dollars in 2021 and $500 million to the new Nashville Titans Stadium in 2022. What is the government's role in public-private partnerships? So it's a two-part question. That's the first part. What should priorities be with regards to stewarding taxpayer dollars? Stewarding.
First of all, the government has no business, no constitutional authority to pick winners and losers in the free market. We've allowed it because of the apathy of the electorate for far too long now. We gave nearly $1 billion to Ford, and look what happened to the Blue Oval City here recently. The government bet, and they bet wrong, but you know what? The government didn't bet with their money. The government bet with our money. With regards to the Nashville Titans Stadium, what constitutional authority does the government have to get involved with a sports team? Stewardship of the money that is paid in taxes is only supposed to be used, again, for the primary function of government, which is to secure the people's liberty.
I 100% agree. The government should not be involved in the free market actions. We shouldn't be promoting a sports team or a car brand over another. The government should not be able to give these people money to help make them better. Let the free markets do that. That's what the free markets are designed to do. When we talk about stewardship, I feel like, just like Mr. Linton said, the primary job of government's money is to secure the liberties that they are supposed to do, or that the government's supposed to uphold. So, yeah.
I voted against giving $500 million to a Democrat district, to an out-of-state family, so boys that won't stand up for the national anthem can play in the dry when it's raining. I thought it was the craziest thing we ever did. The stadium down there is the best stadium in the state. UT Stadium, parts of it's over 100 years old. And we're going to tear down the best stadium in the state and build another stadium so we can get 16 more events per year. Well, you can't pay off $2 billion with 16 events. And it was the craziest thing ever. I told them, I said, I've got people in my district that don't have running water every day. People on Leaders Mountain. Some days they have running water, some days they don't. I said, why are we spending $500 million to an out-of-state family that I'll never go to a football game. And 99.9% of the people in Tennessee will never step foot in that stadium. And we've wasted $500 million when the people in my district, some of them, don't have drinking water. I've got a little bit vocal sometimes with the governor, and the governor, he doesn't like me too much some days.
All right, Frank, we'll start the next question with you. Talking about the Second Amendment, what does the Second Amendment mean to you, and what rights was it written to protect, and who is it not to protect?
What was the last part? What did it not protect?
Who does it not protect?
Well, I voted with, I'm a regular bona fide gun nut. I have the guns my great granddaddy brought me back from the war between the states. I've got my daddy's guns, I got my granddaddy's guns, great granddaddy's guns. The Second Amendment was there to protect yourself from tyranny. It wasn't there so you could hunt or target shoot. It was protect yourself against the government. It's plain and simple. I mean, it's an individual right. Every other right in the Constitution is an individual right. What makes you think that the founding fathers would not have all individual rights? So I voted for every gun bill that's ever been. And the last part, I'm not sure about who it does, but I guess it doesn't protect criminals or something. But we've got probably 700,000 guessing, because we had 600,000 a few years ago, permit holders in the state of Tennessee. And a lot of them are women. You'd be surprised how many of these permit holders are women. They have a purse, it's easier to carry, and they're surprisingly good shots in a panic, some of these women are. But those 700,000 people have a better behavior record than our uniformed police. I mean, our highway patrol, our deputies. I mean, they cause more trouble and cause more crimes than our permit holders. Our permit holders, that permit to them is almost sacred. They're going to behave. An armed society is a polite society. Everybody's nice to everybody. And it would tickle me if everybody in the state was armed. We had a bill this last year, I think, to teach firearm safety in high school. I think everybody ought to be taught firearm safety. You can kill as many people with a ball-peen hammer in a crowded mall as you do with a gun. Especially girls need to be able to feel comfortable with a gun. I have 3 daughters, and they like to shoot. My granddaughters like to shoot. The Second Amendment, like I say, that's what keeps us free. It's not the 11th or 12th or 10th. I mean, it's the second. It's the one that protects all the rest of them.
The Second Amendment secures the people's right to defend themselves against tyranny. It's the first law of nature and of nature's God, the right of self-defense and self-defense against tyranny. A lot of people that you will hear, especially on the communist side of the political spectrum, will say that it was never meant for weapons of war. But if you read Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, the War Powers Clause, it still authorizes the government to issue letters of marque and reprisal. What do you think letters of marque and reprisal are? It's where the federal government will pay the private citizens to wage war on their behalf, because the private citizens are supposed to be better armed than the federal government.
Well, just like they said, the right to bear arms is to protect the people from the government's tyranny. The founders put that in our Constitution because their rights were being taken away by the tyrannical government of Great Britain and King George III. And so that's exactly why it is there, and we have to keep that there, otherwise the government will become tyrannical.
All right, Christian, we'll start the next one with you. Still talking about Second Amendment. There was a bill passed this year that would allow teachers to, under certain stipulations, to carry guns. What role does the Second Amendment play in securing our public schools?
Okay. So I would definitely support some teachers being able to carry firearms. I would say there might need to be a safety course, like the stipulations. Not every teacher probably should. I know I've had a few teachers who might get a little angry at sometimes at some of those kids. But if you want to have that right, I feel like you definitely should. And it can definitely help to prevent people from coming into the schools. We've had such a large increase in the number of school shootings recently, and it's awful to see. It seems like at least once or twice a year there's a major school shooting, and having teachers that are armed will definitely help to prevent that.
The General Assembly did it right by allowing, taking teachers out of being second-class citizens, right? Because the government puts them into gun-free zones and makes them target rich environments and deny them their Second Amendment rights. So now they have their Second Amendment rights secured, but now we have liberal commie superintendents that say they won't allow it. So these commie superintendents are now denying the citizens their Second Amendment rights. So, you know, Frank grew up a little bit before me, but we used to go to school with guns in our trucks, right? We didn't have the school shootings back then, but in the 90s when they created gun-free zones and included schools in it, just to try to alleviate some gun or gang wars around schools, what they did was they created a target-rich environment, and that's why you see a rise in school shootings.
About 10 years ago, after the Sandy Hook shooting up in Connecticut, I passed the first bill to allow teachers to be armed in the nation. Now, another state actually passed the law first, but ours took effect first. So John Roberts with Fox News, he came down and interviewed me, and it was a pretty simple law. It said that, you know, the teacher had to, the principal, the director of schools, and the sheriff all had to sign off on the guy or the girl, whoever it was, and say, you know, they're stable. And they had to have at that time full post training. And we also, in that bill, we allowed these schools to hire retired law officers, highway patrol, game warden, sheriff's deputy, to be SSOs instead of SRO. The SRO would come through the sheriff and would cost a lot of money, but a retired officer, he's already got his retirement, he's got his health insurance, and he's matured, and he already got a car. He could work 100 days, let another one work 100 days, and let these retirees protect their schools. And a few schools have done that, and a few schools had people who had maybe been a deputy at some point and had full post training. And nothing was said about it. I mean, it was passed off smooth. But then we had the shooting at the Covenant school shooting, and that changed everything. Now then, all this new bill did that Senator Bailey had, it had specialized training instead of full post. Teachers don't need full post training. They don't need high-speed chase training and stuff like that. They need specialized to handle a situation if an active shooter. And so it's a good bill. If it hadn't been for the Covenant school shooting, it wouldn't have had all this uproar. But what stops a school shooting? Another gun and a good gun and a good man or good woman stops a school shooting. That's what stopped the shooting at the Covenant school was and they didn't waste any time. They ran right in. I was proud of those boys. They didn't even hesitate at the door. They ran right in and put a stop to it. At some of these other schools that hunker down outside, down in Florida and Texas, the law would just sit out there and wait till the shooting stop before they go in. That made me so mad. You never see a fireman wait till the fire goes out to go in the house. They'll rush in. And to see those guys down in Texas sit there and wait till the shooting stop, it made me kind of disheartened with Texans.
All right, Larry, do you support the federal Title IX mandate that transgender boys will use the same restrooms, showers, and locker rooms with girls? If not, what do you propose to do about it?
First, you have to examine federal Title IX, and then you have to look at it in the context of the enumerated powers of the Constitution that does not give the federal government any authority in schools in the education arena. So, this federal government has no business telling schools what they can and cannot do with boys and girls bathrooms. We need to kick the federal government out of our public schools in the state of Tennessee.
Amen.
So Senator Janice Bowling's bill would have gone a long way to do that, restoring state sovereignty. I fully support legislation like that going forward.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. The federal government does not have that power in our state schools. Now, in respect to that question, I don't think any biological man should ever go into a woman's bathroom. That is not something that should be happening in, especially our schools. I shouldn't be able to go to school and just decide that I'm a woman that day and use that woman's restroom. That is not something that should ever happen. So it should be stuck on that biological, if you're a man or a woman, those lines.
Well, I agree with everything these boys say. And the good news is we have an attorney general right now. The name is Committee. It rhymes with spaghetti, the way I remember it. But he asked the legislature for 20 more lawyers to do nothing but push back against federal overreach. And we've never had an attorney general that would even knew what the word meant before. But he wanted 20 more lawyers, and we gave it to him to push back on federal overreach. And there's things you could do. The best thing to do with the federal government is ignore them. They can't make the state spend money. So if it's just like we had a problem years ago, we still got the problem. Black-headed buzzards had come up from South America, and they'll swarm a cow and eat a cow, peck her eyes out. When you have a calf, eat them alive, and they're terrible. And so we passed a law that said no state dollars, energy, personnel, or equipment can be used enforcing that federal law. So the sheriff can't call the Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. The TWRA can't call them. They can't use their phone. They can't do anything. Nobody can call the feds. Now, it's still against federal law, but there's not enough federal agents to ever do anything about it. So it's what you got to remember. They can't make us spend money. So if we just refuse to enforce their laws, sooner or later they'll give up, go away.
All right, I got a few questions, and these are just yes or no. So no explanation, just yes or no. The first question is, would you support legislation that requires primary voting to be limited to those only that are registered party members?
Close primaries?
Yes, would you support legislation that requires
Kelly, I'm
primary
not
voting?
deaf. There is an echo in your thing there. I can hear everything my wife says, but closed primaries. I don't like closed primaries. Now, I know you probably do, but I don't. When I was first elected in 1988, the Democrats controlled everything. And through the years, by just keeping on, we converted those Democrats over to be Republicans. And they snuck in with their tail between their legs and voted in a primary. And they went home the next morning, the sun came up and the coffee tasted good. And they said, well, that wasn't too bad. And over the years, we've turned Democrats into Republicans. We've got a super majority. We were in a super minority back in 1988. Now we're a super majority. We did that with open primaries. Why do you want to mess with something that's working? Sometimes I think if we'd had closed primaries, a lot of those Democrats that ended up eventually switching may not have done it. I know that's something that a lot of conservative groups are big on, but I mean, we have done it without closed primaries. I had Democrat friends that sneak in and vote for me, and then before long they were Republicans. So I just don't. I know a lot of conservatives say we need to close the primaries. Most people who get beat blame it on the Democrats sneaking in and voting them. They just got beat because nobody liked them.
Well, I'm going to give a little bit. I've seen the voter rolls in the county for the last 6 elections, so I know that there's a lot of crossover voting to alter the outcome of the election. So yes, I would support legislation to close the primaries.
And I'll give a simple yes, I would support closed primaries.
All right, next question, also yes, no. In 2023, HB 422 was proposed that imposed checks and balances on the governor's emergency powers by stating that the legislature had to approve extension of emergency orders. Do you support legislation that puts checks and balances on the emergency powers of the governor?
Yes, I support any legislation that puts checks and balances on the people in charge of government.
Yes.
Back when the Democrats were in control, back about 2002, the Democrats gave the governor a lot of power, and I would support legislation to clip his wings on that. He doesn't need that much power.
All right, the next question is just for Larry and Christian. Current rules in the Tennessee House allow for committees to vote via voice voting, which is when committees say yay or nay as a group to a bill, and then the committee chair determines if the yays or nays had a majority vote based on the volume of the replies. This makes it difficult to know exactly how state representatives vote on legislation. Do you support changing this rule in the House to instate roll call voting, where each representative would have to specifically say yes or no and have it on record on all legislation?
Yes, all the way down to the subcommittee level, because the people need to know how their representatives vote.
I'm actually going to say no, I would not support changing that, because the point of the House of Representatives is to be efficient and get things done quickly. That's why we have so many of them, because we can get it done quicker than the Senate can. That's the point of the House of Representatives. So the voice vote allows us to do that quicker. And if we can do it just a little bit quicker, then it'll help get everything done.
All right, last yes-no question. Representative Bud Halsey ran a nullification bill that didn't get passed, but would have created a process for the legislature to nullify unconstitutional dictates. If that can be brought back next session, would you be in support of it? And this is for all three of you, yes or no?
I would like to support a bill like that, and I would vote for it. The problem I would see is the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, ruling that unconstitutional. I would definitely still vote for it, but then I do fear that they would rule it unconstitutional, sadly.
Yes, I fully support it, and it's completely constitutional because it's the 10th Amendment.
Yeah, I would support it. I think I carried it. If it's unconstitutional, we can nullify it. And believe it or not, the hippies out in Colorado nullified marijuana laws. They didn't know they did it. We'd have to tell them they did it. They don't realize they did it, but they did. They basically nullified federal law, and then Washington State did it. And we can nullify it. Madison, in 1830, Madison said that nullification was legal. And they said, well, who, if it's unconstitutional, if a law is unconstitutional, they said, well, who determines if a law is unconstitutional? He said, the people or their agents. Well, the legislature is the agent of the people. So if we decide, if it's not mentioned in the Constitution, the federal government doesn't have the right to do it. 10th Amendment, if it's not mentioned. Marijuana was not mentioned in the Constitution. So anything that the federal government did on marijuana was unconstitutional. I mean, it's simple. I mean, I'm a big fan of nullification, and we, just like our black-headed buzzard bill, we nullified that law. There's ways the states can nullify things without using the nullification word. You just do it, forget it. Yeah, just do it.
All right, Frank, we'll do the next one with you. Just got a couple questions left. All right, how do you ensure, or how will you ensure that citizens have the opportunity to meet with you? And on a highly contested subject, how will you obtain the opinion of the citizens in your district?
How do I attain the opinions? Most of the good bills I come up with, some constituent told me about it. When it's amazing how smart my constituents are. And like I say, most of my good bills, I talk to people, they come up with a good idea, we think about it, we run it by legal services, we get a bill, we look at it, we change things. The founding fathers made it hard to pass a law. They wanted it to be hard. They didn't want us to go down there and just pass a bunch of junk. And sometimes you get frustrated when you're down there. You say, man, that's a good bill, should have been able to get it passed. But the founding fathers didn't want you to be able to pass everything. And that's what you got to remember. And you say, well, why couldn't you pass that? Well, maybe we need to do it next year. Maybe we need to think about it a while, get some finesse a little bit. But you got to remember, if we don't do anything, the state just rolls right along fine. And we got plenty of laws on the books. And if we didn't meet one year, everything be fine.
Whenever government meets, your liberties are lost. But anyway, yes, for those of you that do know me, for those of you who don't, I run a weekly podcast. That's how I inform people of everything that I'm doing. I will maintain that podcast going forward if elected, and inform the voters of the machinations of government that are running roughshod over their liberty. And I plan to, while the General Assembly is in session, I'll be here every weekend with nothing else to do, but I'll come here and talk to anybody that wants to talk to me. I'll hold forums everywhere you want me to.
So Senator Niceley earlier today, he was telling me one thing that he does is give away his personal cell number. And so that's something I would love to do with every constituent. Give every constituent your personal cell number. Give them my personal cell number, not Senator Niceley. Yeah. And so, just having an open line of communication at all times, where any constituent can always give you a phone call, a text message, anything at any time to find out some information.
All right.
Yeah, he mentioned my name, so I get to respond. I may have heard it wrong, but my cell number's been on my card forever.
Yeah, well, you were saying that you make sure.
I make sure everybody has it, because if they want to talk to me, I want to talk to them right then, and get it over with, and
pull the Band-Aid off, right?
Yeah, just go ahead and talk to them.
Yeah, I love that.
All right, this is the last question, and then we'll have time for closing statements. Time and time again, we see and hear about political pressures from state leadership and the impact on how our legislators vote. How do you determine your vote when the people of your district are in conflict with the desires of leadership?
Well, first of all, the desires of leadership, or the leadership that's in the General Assembly, didn't put me in the office. And, I say this quite often. I'm a retired Command Master Chief of the United States Navy. I learned long ago that, one time I brought feelings to work and somebody stepped on them. So I don't bring a feeling to work anymore. I understand who I work for. I don't work for the people in Nashville. I'll work for the people of House District 12. I've faced enemies in combat. I've faced Iranian gunboats coming down on my warship, willing to kill us. Nothing that anybody in Nashville can say or do to me is going to affect me.
the leadership in Nashville will not control my vote. My constituents, if they want me to vote a way that the leadership does not want, I will vote the way that the constituents want me to vote, because they are the people that I am serving. I am not serving the leaders of the party or the leaders of the House. So, yeah.
There's a dilemma in here somewhere. We're not a pure democracy. If you ever had democracy don't work. I mean, democracy is two coyotes and a sheep voting on what's for lunch. They don't work. Founding fathers, the word democracy is not in the Constitution. It's not in the Declaration of Independence. It's not in any one of the 50 state constitutions. So here's the dilemma. What if I'm down there voting on something and I know things that the public doesn't know, and the public wants me to vote yes, but I know things they don't know yet, and I don't have time to tell everybody, but what do I do then? Then I have to vote what's best for them. That's called a representative form of government. You elected me as your representative to go down there and listen to all the issues, listen to both sides, and decide what's best for the people. And that's why we're not a democracy, we're a representative, and you elected me to be your representative. You elected me, put enough confidence in me to go down there and listen to both sides and figure out how the best way to vote for you, because you're too busy working, making taxes, pay your taxes and feed your family and everything. So you don't have time to do it all, so you elected a representative, one of these guys or me or whatever, to go down and study the issue and vote the way it's best for you. And you just got to remember that we're not a pure democracy. Jefferson said we're a republic with democratic tendencies. We're a democratic republic. Jefferson said he was a democratic republican. Well, a lot of these new people, they don't know a noun from an adjective. The noun there is the republic. The adjective is what kind of? Well, I'm a democratic republic, but I'm a republican. And so there are times when I know things that the people back home don't know, and I have to decide, do I go with them and try to get a vote next time, or I do what's right for them? I do what's right for them. Sometimes I get in trouble.
All right.
So to Frank's point on that, I want to clarify. I mean, if leadership tells me to vote one way and it's completely different, I'm going to make the best decision, but I'm not going to do it because leadership tells me what to do. I'll do it because I'm following my oath and not do anything injurious to the people.
All right, we're going to give you 90 seconds each for any closing statements.
All right, we started that way. You can start now.
I guess you're right. Well, thank you for listening to me. This has been a great honor and a pleasure to get to talk up here. I've always wanted to do something like this, and now I've gotten to. It's a dream come true. I would appreciate your vote. I believe that I'm someone who can go into Nashville and make a difference, make a change, and be someone that will represent everyone of District 12. So thank you very much.
I would definitely really appreciate your vote. I understand that what's wrong with government can be fixed by Christ-centered servant leadership in our government, just as our founding fathers envisioned our government running. This is hard to do, but the poop show of the 2020 election, followed by the poop show in here in Sevier County with our Republican Party, reminded me that my oath to the Constitution did not expire when I retired from the Navy. I still serve the Constitution.
Well, I've served down there a pretty good while now. Been in the Senate 3 terms, 12 years. Now the word Senate comes from an old Greek root word. Some people say senior. I like to think senior. Some people think senile, but I like to think it came from senior. Typically the House members are young and wild and crazy, and I had a good time with us in the House. But the Senate is for typically older people, a little more gray hair, think things through, take your time, don't get in a hurry, do the right thing. And the Senate and the House don't always agree. And that's a good thing. Like I say, we don't have to pass bills. We can wait next year. I remember bills that I introduced 20 years ago that finally passed. I'd given up on them and somebody else passed it. So it's a slow process. And I don't know who it was that said there's two things the general public should never see. And that's a bill moving through Congress or legislature or sausage being made.
They look the same.
All right, that's all our questions for tonight. So thank you all for agreeing to come and accept our invitation. So that concludes our night, except we do have the straw poll. On your way out, there are ballots on the table by the door. So for the 3 seats, the County Commission, Tennessee Senate District 8, and Tennessee House District 12, those will be the 3 seats on that ballot. And you can vote, you don't have to put your name on it or anything, and then just drop it in the basket as you leave. And thank you for coming.
Don't forget the wise words from the candidate that didn't show up.